She hid the human warrior in a cave 250 years ago. Now she's back. Shaking him. Wake up. They Found Us reaches its climax when Alex infiltrates the enemy flagship as alarms blare throughout the council chambers. With the planet hours from destruction, Premier Kadesh must choose between centuries of hatred or peace. As Jack sacrifices himself, Alex's detonation silences the warships, forcing bitter enemies to finally confront the possibility of coexistence. The air tasted like death. Kira Valen moved silently across the field of ash, each footstep sending small clouds of gray dust swirling upward. The scarlet sky above her was thick with smoke and debris, casting an eerie glow over the devastated landscape of Valeris. Once a thriving planet of great technological advancement, now reduced to this, a graveyard of twisted metal and shattered dreams. The battle alarms echoed through her Valoran communication implant, distant but persistent. The war between humanity and her kind had raged for 3 years now, and Convergence, the site of the first major battle and the root of hostility between the two species, had been reduced to nothing but a wasteland. Kira paused, her azure skin glistening with sweat beneath the light armor of the Hope Special Task Force. Her icy eyes scanned the battlefield, trained to spot movement among the dead. The smell of scorched metal and flesh filled her nostrils, a scent she had become far too accustomed to. How many of her people had she watched fall? How many humans had she cut down herself? That's when she saw him. Half buried beneath a collapsed steel beam, a human soldier lay motionless, his Nova Special Forces uniform torn and soaked with blood. Dust and sweat had caked on his face, but there was something in his eyes, a fierce determination that somehow persisted even in his defeated state. Kira approached cautiously, her hand resting on the hilt of her plasma blade. The orders were clear: eliminate all enemies, no exceptions. The human's eyes followed her movement, acknowledging her presence without fear. A conflict raged within her. What did the war demand of her now? Her mission as a Valoran warrior was absolute: destroy the enemy. Yet something about this human, this Alex Shepard, according to the name patch on his shredded uniform, made her pause. It wasn't weakness she sensed in him, but rather an extraordinary resilience that struck a chord deep within her. "Finish it," he whispered, his voice hoarse from smoke and blood. Her entire Valoran brigade expected her to kill him. That's what she had been trained to do, what she had done countless times before. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw not surrender, but acceptance. And something inside her changed. With strength that surprised even herself, Kira lifted the steel beam off the human. She could hear distant gunfire from her comrades, but she didn't care. In that moment, she made her first act of betrayal against her own kind. She pulled Alex from the wreckage, supporting his broken body as she led him away from the battlefield. For 48 hours, Kira guided him through the hollow tunnels, an abandoned mining network beneath the red iron waterfall. Every step threatened to expose them to Valoran state patrols, hidden landmines, or structural collapse. Each movement pushed them closer to either tragedy or salvation. Deep within a secret chamber of the caverns, Kira activated an ancient cryopod, temporary freezing technology left behind by previous generations of Valoran. The future was uncertain. There was no telling if the war would ever end. She hesitated as she looked at the unconscious Alex. "If I save you, I might die for it, but if I don't, you'll die here." Finally, she placed him in the freezing chamber, programming it to maintain minimal life functions, and forced his heart to beat with the monitoring machine. Alex looked at Kira through the frosting glass, his eyes still pleading. She murmured, "See you again, when the war ends." Kira sealed the cryopod and erased her tracks. She walked out of the cave and back to the Valoran front, carrying the weight of her betrayal. The consequence: She was placed on a wanted list, though still decorated for her bravery in the next battle. But everyone silently questioned her motives. 250 years later, the world had changed beyond recognition. The planet Valeris had become a deformed world. Civil war raged between the ruling government faction, the Dominion, and rebel groups, the Dissidents, with the military forces of the Outer Colonies Federation preparing for a total annihilation strike. New Haven, once a shining beacon of technology, was now reduced to cinders. The entire periphery was submerged in toxic smoke from biological warfare. The scars of 2.5 centuries of conflict had transformed the planet into something unrecognizable. Kira, now aged but still formidable as the commander of the Crimson Lotus Brigade, led a small intelligence team through the wasteland to rediscover the hollow tunnels. Her green skin was covered in battle scars, but her eyes still burned with determination. Their journey across the depleted desert zone was fraught with danger. Valoran scout planes hunted them. Dissident traps threatened at every turn, and human Federation raiders lurked in the shadows. Yet, Kira pressed on, driven by a purpose that had sustained her through centuries of fighting. Avoiding a squad of Outer Colonies troops in the flooded tunnel below, Kira used thermal sensors to locate the old cryopod. Memories flooded back, the red iron waterfall now reduced to ashen gray. Alex's face behind the glass panel. She pressed a hidden switch to unlock the chamber. As the cryopod emitted activation signals, the air filtration and temperature systems reactivated. Alex awakened, shocked, pained, writhing beneath the crumbling ceiling. He thrashed in panic, screaming in the darkness of the mineshaft, believing himself back in the final moment of the old battlefield. Kira had to shake him, shouting, "Wake up, Alex! They found us!" After regaining his composure, Kira briefly recounted the 250 years of prolonged war between the Valoran and the Outer Colonies dynasty. She explained, "This planet has only 72 hours left before complete destruction by the Outer Colonies fleet." Alex, though disoriented, quickly regained his disciplined spirit, accepting the situation and determined to help Kira. They agreed to begin the dangerous journey to Valerisfor's capital, now called Citadel Nova, to propose a ceasefire. Their 2-day journey would take them through the wastelands of Ash and Sniper Alley, territories contested by dissidents, Valoran government forces, and Outer Colonies Federation soldiers. The first challenge awaited at the ruined fortress. Once a Valoran stronghold, now it was occupied by salvagers, scavengers who hunted corpses, and prisoners to sell to the Outer Federation. Kira and Alex combined their skills. Alex created a diversion with fake gunfire, creating an opening for Kira to sneak in and disable the watchtower. They made it through, but Kira suffered a severe shoulder wound. As they took shelter in an abandoned bunker, Alex tended to Kira's injury. "Do you resent being saved 250 years ago?" she asked quietly. Alex replied with calm resignation, "I haven't had time to hate. The war has lasted longer than my lifetime." They shared memories. How Kira had pulled him from the rubble, how he had saved the last oxygen for her. Their next obstacle was the flooded bunker complex, half-submerged chambers with water up to their chests, glowing with strange algae. A team of Outer Colonies Federation soldiers blocked their path, using underwater tactics. Alex used his old rebreather to swim beneath the traps. He coordinated with Kira. She held off 2 threatening Federation soldiers, while Alex disarmed vintage mines controlling all exits. Crisis struck when Kira slipped and lost consciousness as a metal shard pierced her shoulder. Nearly drowning, Alex was resolute. "I won't let you die again." He resuscitated Kira on the cold water surface while shooting down the remaining salvagers. The stakes were clear. If Kira died, the entire mission would fail, and the Outer Colonies Federation would destroy Citadel Nova within 24 hours. Their final challenge before reaching the capital was Sniper Alley, a desolate urban area with crumbling buildings and shattered windows. Valorant snipers were positioned everywhere, with possible dissident infiltrators among them. Alex led the way by finding a side route, an underground sewer leading outside the city perimeter. Kira used her Valorant survival skills to bypass electrical detection waves. They made it through successfully, despite taking 2 critical shots. One grazing Kira's hip, another penetrating Alex's side armor. At last, they reached Citadel Nova, magnificent yet gloomy. Its architecture a blend of ancient Valorant and Outer Federation hypercom technology. Massive screens projected maps of spacecraft approaching the atmosphere. Kira escorted Alex through a private entrance, posing as a captured prisoner. Both guided through biometric checkpoints. Alex was handcuffed, appearing as a living symbol of the invasion threat. The council chamber was crescent-shaped, surrounded by 8 statues of Valorant war heroes. Premier Kadesh, the prestigious leader who had recently seized power after a coup, appeared tense, his eyes indifferent when looking at Kira. The traitor. Premier Kadesh ordered his guards to seize Alex, imprison him, and interrogate him. Kira knelt, requesting permission to present evidence. The Outer Federation's trap will destroy Citadel Nova within 48 hours. The chamber erupted, dividing into reactions. The war faction shouting, "Arrest her and the human traitor." The moderate faction questioning the data. Despite being chained, Alex stood tall in the center of the meeting room. He observed Premier Kadesh with cold eyes. When invited to the podium, he precisely detailed the command ship's position in the Outer Federation fleet. His 3 years of training had given him intimate knowledge of battle plans. The technical evidence was compelling. Alex described the Achilles node, the military antenna connection port deep within the flagship. If destroyed before 0 hour, the entire fleet would lose communication, delaying the attack long enough for the Valorant to reorganize. Kira looked at Kadesh, her voice sharp. "You'll destroy our people's future if you keep believing in war." Premier Kadesh growled, "You dare interfere with the Valorant future? You dare use a human to pressure us?" His threats were clear. "I should have you captured or executed right now." Suddenly, the alarm system blared. The Outer Federation fleet has launched a long-range artillery strike on the outskirts of Citadel Nova. The entire meeting room shook. Premier Kadesh fell silent. The 48 hours remaining had shrunk to less than 24. The council had to vote: continue destroying humanity, or temporary ceasefire to implement the plan targeting the flagship. Kira held the intel files in trembling hands, while Alex stood ready to swear on the mine. The vote was dramatic. 6 war faction against, 5 moderates in favor, 3 members abstaining. But as the alarms escalated, Premier Kadesh, under the pressure of having tested the missile launchers, decided to allow 50 hours of temporary ceasefire as requested by Kira and Alex. Preparations for Operation Sulphur Dawn began immediately. Alex was assigned to board and approach the flagship under the guise of a Valorant technician, assisted by a young crew. Jaden Jax Reed, chief pilot skilled at flying fast scout ships, with multiple confrontations against the outer fleet. Commander Thyra Lan, former Valorant intelligence officer, trusted by Kira, directly commanding the operation. Kira was assigned as tactical advisor at Citadel Nova, exploiting all intel data and coordinating air and ground forces to create a backdoor for Alex to penetrate the defense line. Alex boarded the supersonic ship Starlance, equipped with stealth technology and electromagnetic pulse weapons. Everything happened under the suspicious eyes of a council faction. Why is a human entrusted with the decisive campaign blueprint? But Premier Kadesh shrugged. "We have no other choice." The Starlance plunged into space between orbital defense platforms. Detailed descriptions followed of the Starlance evading defensive laser arrays, using EMP to disable secondary radars, approaching the flagship named OCS Dominion's Wrath. Alex and Jax infiltrated the main control bridge of Dominion's Wrath, Alarms blared, lights flashed, and plasma-armed guards launched a surprise attack. In a shocking twist, the ship still had an automatic missile interception layer. Jax sacrificed himself by rushing across the control panel, triggering a mini EMP blade, clearing the way for Alex to place the high-yield detonator, HDU, into the electrical transmission system. After activating the HDU, Alex ran to the escape pod. An explosion rocked Dominion's wrath, causing the entire Outer Federation fleet to lose communication and cease fire. The abort signal returned to Citadel Nova. Communications officers pressed the red button as the atmosphere flashed brightly. The entire capital froze. Defensive gunfire stopped. 3 days later, the Citadel Nova Council convened a historic peace conference alliance between Valoran, the Outer Federation, and the remaining dissidents. Alex, though bound with data cables, was led through the honor gate rather than the security detention room. He handed Premier Kadesh the privileged certificate of the ultimate victor, actually paperwork acknowledging Alex's decisive role. The Outer Colonies Federation representative, Minister Lark Morrison, stated terms. We will cease fire if the Valoran open doors for the Central Federation government to establish a security outpost. The Valoran delivered the Rebirth of a Planet speech, written by Kira. If we prevent peace with weapons, we will die like our enemies. Dramatically, most of the council, previously supporting war, now had to bow their heads and accept the proposal. 1 year later, Valeris IV began reconstruction. The damaged Atmos processor was rehabilitated by collaborative human Valoran engineers. The old cryopod in the hollow tunnels still emitted a faint blue light, but had ceased functioning. Instead, wounded Valoran and human soldiers were placed in dynamic revival chambers for recovery. 10 years later, 2 small regions, New Haven District and Nova Concord, emerged. Cultural centers where Valoran and Alex's descendants lived together. Kira, now the emissary of synthesis, led the annual Festival of Awakening Parade, commemorating Alex Shepard's Awakening Day, with thousands participating. Alex, the hero of the Forgotten Sleepers, was elected Living Ambassador of Peace. He and Kira looked toward the horizon, where their descendants, Valoran and human, played together, holding metal rods that once symbolized weapons, but now represented building the future. The story closed with Kira's words from the final page of her memoir. They found us. When war becomes habit, we forget the meaning of peace. But it takes just one brave person to stop killing for us to have a chance to rebuild. They found us, but we found ourselves. That was the moment this planet awakened. The crimson sky above Valeris had faded. In its place, for the first time in centuries, stars glittered like hope against the darkness. Under a newly constructed memorial at the entrance to the hollow tunnels, a small plaque read, 250 years of sleep, 1 moment of courage, forever awakened. Visitors, human and Valoran alike, left small tokens, polished stones, miniature crystals that glowed in the dark, and occasionally pieces of armor transformed into art. Kira stood on the balcony of the synthesis tower. Her aged features softened in the evening light. The weight of centuries showed in the lines of her face, but her eyes retained their fierce determination. She watched as children played in the courtyard below, azure-skinned Valoran youngsters, chasing human children through an elaborate obstacle course that once would have been training for war, now repurposed for play. Alex approached, moving with the slight stiffness of a man who had survived too many battles. The northeastern quadrant reports successful atmospheric cleansing, he said. First time in generations that sector has had breathable air. Kira nodded. There was a time I couldn't imagine breathing without tasting ash. They stood in silence, watching the horizon where construction crews, mixed teams of humans and Valoran, were dismantling old defense turrets, repurposing the metal for housing structures. Do you ever wonder, Alex asked quietly, what would have happened if you'd followed orders that day? Kira's fingers traced an old scar on her forearm. Every day. But I wonder more about what would have happened if I'd woken you sooner. Or later. Perfect timing, Alex said with a small smile. That's what Commander Thyra calls it in the history texts. History is written by survivors, Kira replied. And we survived because we chose something different. In the distance, the remnants of a once mighty Outer Colonies vessel was being converted into a university, its weapons bays transformed into laboratories, its bridge into a grand library, knowledge replacing firepower, understanding supplanting fear. They're voting tomorrow on the Interspecies Charter, Alex said. The first formal alliance between our peoples. Will it pass? Kira asked, though she already knew the answer. Unanimously, according to Premier Kadesh's daughter. She says even the war faction has exhausted its appetite for destruction. Kira's hand found Alex's, her azure fingers intertwining with his. Two warriors from different worlds, separated by time, but united by a singular choice made in the ashes of battle. Wake up, she whispered, echoing her words from that moment in the cave. They found us. But this time, there was no fear in her voice, only peace.